Mr Speaker. One of the great advantages of joining the debate later in the piece is the chance to hear the contributions of all those members who have spoken before you. And I intend to use most of my speaking time to address the issues that were raised initially by the Honourable Marianne Street. But the speakers that succeeded her all raised various issues, which I feel as I need to comment on to varying degrees. First of all, to Jackie Blue, who made the comment that the ACT Party had agreed to support this bill all the way to the third reading, and that comment was picked up by Darian Fenton. That is not the case. The ACT Party agreed to support this bill stage by stage, and Mr Speaker, we'll be voting for this at the stage 2, at the second stage, but we are approaching it on a stage-by-stage basis. Mr Speaker, to Rahui Kartanei, who said that the Maori Party approach bills on a bill-by-bill basis, and if there's a basis for supporting it, any good coming out of it, I congratulate the Maori Party. I think it's a very good approach to take an open view on issues. Rahui went on to say that the Maori Party were concerned about the impact of this bill on vulnerable people, and I believe that the long-term consequences of passing this bill and addressing the issues that affect vulnerable people, I believe that the passing of this bill will actually in the long term be actually in the best interest of vulnerable people and low-income people, and she particularly identified Maori. To Kevin Haig, who said that the ACT Party salivate like Pavlovian dogs at the thought of privatisation, that's not correct. But there's one thing that the ACT Party hold higher than anything, and that's competition. That's competition and choice. And interesting, this morning at the Commerce Select Committee, we heard from Cordia. Cordia is the state-owned enterprise that took over the ownership of Television New Zealand's masts and antennas. And Cordia is looking at the feasibility of building a trans-Tasman telephone cable that would compete with Southern Cross's, the Southern Cross cable owned by Telecom. And just the very mention of Cordia considering the opening of a second cable is enough for Telecom to offer significantly cheaper prices to some of its wholesale customers. So Cordia is actually a government-owned organisation. The most important thing, Mr Haig, is competition and choice. And I mention that, sir, I mention that, sir, because we actually have had competition and choice in ACC before. We had it in 1998 and 1999. And in the 12 months prior to the 99 election campaign, the workers' account was actually open to competition, sir. There were some six companies that offered ACC cover to employers, including the government-owned ACC company at work. And the effect, sir, of that competition, that choice, was to drive premiums down by 30%. 30%. That was the effect. And people who have tried to discredit that say, well, that was a lost leader. Exactly, here it is, lost leader. Well, I have it. You're just perpetuating the dishonesty and the mistruths. The insurance companies who offered competition, offered policies in 1998 and 1999 were able to do that, sir, at a 30% reduction on premiums and competed very, very successfully. And it is one of the many tragedies of the last Labor government, that they came into power promising to abolish that competition and that choice and to reinstitute a state monopoly. Mr Speaker, let me go on to the contribution of Lynn Pillay. She made the point, sir, that there had been a protest on the forecourt of Parliament on Tuesday, and she said that not 25, Mr Garrett, I think it was 200. I'm not so sure that Lynn Pillay was there, because unless I heard her, didn't hear her properly, I think she said that there was 2,000. Well, sir, I was actually there. There was 200 people at best. And I can't speak for the National Party. Lynn Pillay criticised the National Party for not having representatives at that protest. I can't speak for the National Party, but, sir, I was there, and I was very, very interested to hear what those protesters had to say. Interesting also that Lynn Pillay talked about it's a numbers game. She said this is a numbers game. She said the government had the numbers and it didn't matter what the submitters said. The government had the numbers and they were able to push this bill through the Select Committee. Well, I actually think that's a bit rich from Lynn Pillay, because Lynn Pillay knows a lot about numbers games, Mr Speaker. I first met Lynn Pillay when she was chairwoman of the Justice and Electoral Select Committee. I appeared as a submitter to that select committee, and I submitted against the Electoral Finance Act, sir. And I went on to organise 7 protest marches around New Zealand, the largest of which was in Auckland on the 1st of December 2008, when 5,000 people marched down Queen Street. And, sir, if it wasn't for Lynn Pillay and her talking about numbers, sir, that bill was pushed through with the benefit of numbers. So let me now come to the Labour's Speaker, Marianne Street, because I have a great deal of respect for Marianne Street. I think she's a very courteous lady, and I've enjoyed what few interactions I've had with Marilyn Street over the last 15 months. Sir, Marilyn Street talked about half-truths. Marianne, sorry, apologise. Talked about half-truths. Talked about the minister never telling the full truth. Well, so I want to comment on that, but before I do, I also want to acknowledge that I thought that she actually made a very, very valid point. And before I go on to talk about that, sir, just talking about half-truths, last week we had a debate on the Prime Minister's statement. We had the Labour Party standing up, speaker after speaker after speaker, talking about the increase in milk and bread and power. Well, sir, a 2.5% increase in GST will increase the price of electricity by 2.5%. 2.5%, sir, if we'd had Labour's emissions trading scheme, we'd have had a 10% increase. So if there's anyone wanting to give an example of half-truths, it has to be speakers from the Labour Party. But, sir, let me come now to the main point of what I wanted to say. Marianne Street made the point, and she said, people are now able to be saved, whereas some years ago they would have died. I just want to repeat that, sir. Marianne Street said, people are now able to be saved, whereas some years ago they would have died. And I believe, sir, that this really comes to the crux of the ACC issue. She went on to say, ACC does whatever it takes to support a person after they've been injured. And what she was saying is that there have been significant advances in the medical profession over the last 30-odd years since the ACC Corporation first came into effect. And, sir, she was acknowledging that people who had an accident 20, 25, 30 years ago who would have died, now if they have that same accident, they live. Or they're more likely to live. And that could come out through advances in the medical field. It could come about through advances in just transport, the strengthening of cars. And so it is a fact that someone seriously injured in a car accident or an accident in the workplace who may be paralysed, they may become a tetraplegic. Whereas 20, 25 years ago, that person may have died, that person now, because of advances in technology, lives. And lives, sir, at quite a very significant cost to the community. The cost of rehabilitating and maintaining that person and providing support to a tetraplegic around the clock, 24-hour nursing care and shifts can be up to $1 million a year, sir. So the cost of an injury to someone who's young and who then goes on to live the next 30 or 40 years of natural life runs to some tens of millions of dollars. And so that's what we have to face. That's what we have to face. And so when the ACC Corporation does an analysis of its future liabilities, it looks at the number of people in that situation. And as every year goes by, sir, Mr. Speaker, more and more people fall sadly into that category. So in the 1970s and 80s, people who were involved in serious accidents invariably didn't live. What the corporation has to face up to and what taxpayers have to face up to and what the government's got to face up to, sir, is that we've got massive tail liabilities. And the liability of the ACC Corporation has been calculated at some $24 billion. Now, the assets of the corporation, sir, are only about $14 billion. $14 billion. And so, sir, it is because of these advances in medical technology, it's because of the advances that Marianne Street talks about that we need to adjust this issue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call Carol Beaumont.
I
I rise with a heavy heart because, like others, I know that this is just a start